When I'm shaping a sound in QuickSampler and Logic Pro, the amp controls how I manage its volume, panning, and how it behaves over time. These settings are key to making a sample feel dynamic, responsive, and musical, whether I want it to hit hard, fade gently, or react differently depending on how I play. The amp section not only controls the basic output level and stereo position, but also includes a powerful amplitude envelope, which allows me to shape how the sound evolves from the moment I press a key to the moment it fades out. First, I usually start by adjusting the pan knob to place the sample in the stereo field. For example, if I'm layering multiple hi-hats or percussion elements, I'll spread them slightly left and right using the pan control to give the beat some width and space. It's a simple way to make a mix feel more alive and balanced. I might pan a vocal chop slightly to the left and a response chop slightly to the right, giving the feeling of a back and forth conversation in the stereo field. The polyphony setting lets me decide how many voices can play at once. If I want to use the sampler like a synth pad, I'll allow full polyphony so I can play rich chords. But if I'm doing something like a chopped vocal or 808, where I want each new note to cut off the previous one, I'll set it to monophonic, one voice at a time. This is especially useful for drum one-shots or bass lines, where overlapping notes would sound muddy or unrealistic. For instance, in a bass patch, I set it to mono with a bit of glide, so each note transitions smoothly to the next without stacking up. The volume knob is straightforward. It controls the overall loudness. I often use it to balance the sampler's output against the rest of the mix. If I've added a filter that makes the sound quieter or used an envelope that changes the dynamic shape, I may need to tweak the volume here to bring it back to the level I want. The real magic happens in the envelope section, where I can shape how the sound behaves over time using an ADHSR envelope: attack, decay, hold, sustain, and release. I can either drag points on the envelope for visual tweaking or enter values directly for precision. Attack controls how quickly the sound reaches full volume after I press a key. A fast attack gives me a sharp, immediate hit. It's great for drums or percussive samples. A slow attack creates a fade-in effect, which I use for pads, reverse sounds, or swelling effects. For example, when I want a vocal sample to wash into the mix, I'll slow the attack to make it feel more ambient and gentle. Hold determines how long the full volume is held after the attack, before the sound starts to decay. It's useful when I want the sound to stay loud for a brief moment before fading, kind of like a plateau. If I'm working with a snare that I want to ring out just a little longer before the tail fades, I'll use hold to extend that peak without affecting the attack or decay settings. Decay controls how long it takes to fall from that peak volume after the hold phase down to the sustain level. If I want a quick, tight sound, I'll shorten the decay For more natural or expressive sounds, like a plucked string or vocal note, a slightly longer decay helps it feel more lifelike. Sustain sets the level the sound holds while I'm holding the key down. Unlike attack or decay, it's not a time-based setting, just a volume level. If I set sustain to 0, the sound will decay to silence unless I increase the release. If I raise the sustain, the sound will hold at the level as long as I'm pressing the note. This is important for sounds that need to stick around, like organ, chords, or lead melodies. Release is what happens when I let go of the key. It sets how long it takes for the sound to fade to silence. A short release gives me a clean stop, good for rhythmic or staccato parts. A long release makes the sound linger, which works beautifully for ambient textures or large chords. For example, if I'm designing a reverb heavy pad, I'll extend the release to make the sound fade gradually, even after I've released the key. One of the more expressive tools in this section is the velocity slider, which controls how responsive the amplitude envelope is to how hard I play. At 0, every note is the same volume, regardless of how soft or hard I hit the keys. But if I want more expression, I raise the velocity slider. At full, it gives me full control. Playing softly produces a quiet sound, and playing hard gives me the full volume. Altogether, these amp controls allow me to shape not just how loud a sound is, but how it behaves, responds, and evolves. Whether you want a plucky staccato sound, a slowly blooming pad, or a punchy, one-shot drum hit that fades out quickly, this section gives me all the tools I need. It's not just about volume, it's about feel. How the sound reacts to each keystroke or MIDI message can make a massive difference in how musical and dynamic the result is. By mastering the amp envelope and understanding how each parameter works together, I can make even a simple sample feel expressive and alive. This is where a quick sampler really starts to feel like a full instrument, letting me shape the character of each sound with nuance and precision.